Hey, and welcome back to the All My Love Lucy podcast.
We're so glad you're here with us for episode number 31. And this letter, I'm excited about it, aren't you?
I am too, yeah.
This is a fun letter. It's got a lot of good information, and we have a lot more letters coming your way. So we're so glad you're joining us, and thanks for all the love and support. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode. If you've not seen it yet, go back and watch that. We are going to have an uninterrupted reading of the letter at the end, as always. So stick around for that. And are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's just jump in.
Let's do it.
September 20th, 1944. My darling Jimmie, I was so relieved and happy to receive your two lovely letters yesterday. I was very interested to hear you are in Belgium. I once spent a holiday in Bruges, a cathedral town, and thought the walks along the canal very pretty, but I found the bells ringing from morning to night rather depressing. I wonder whether they still use retriever dogs to draw small carts. I also spent a little time at Ostend. I am so glad to hear that people are treating you well. Personally, I'm inclined to think the Belgians are really sincere and not so mercenary as the French.
Okay, so there is a lot to unpack here. She's talked about a lot of things in this little small paragraph, and we're going to dive into a lot of this right now. First of all, we want to step back into Bruges in Belgium in the 1930s, because that's likely when Lucy would have visited. She probably wouldn't have been there in the 40s. It's probably, I think, in the 30s is when she was probably there. And that would have been before the war, and we're going to try to imagine Belgium through the eyes of a British traveler. And so in the letter we're looking at here, written in 1944, Lucy starts reminiscing about that time she went there, that picture-perfect medieval town in northwest Belgium. Bruges, even then, was like something out of a painting. Cobblestone streets, canals lined with old stone houses, and the tall cathedral towers rising above it all. She calls it a cathedral town, which captures that sense of quiet grandeur. And have you looked at some of the pictures?
I have.
I know.
It is beautiful.
We got to add that to the itinerary.
I know.
I was thinking, we're going to have to stay over in Europe for a long time because we have to go to these places.
That is fine by me.
I know. But she calls it that, a cathedral town. And then she adds something very interesting. She talks about that the bells ringing from morning to night were rather depressing. And so that's actually a very real detail and something that is even relevant today. They still do that today. So Bruges is famous for its carillons, and that's those large sets of bells in the belfry tower. And they play music all day long. But for locals, it's actually the city's heartbeat. They love it. But to a visitor, especially someone who may be used to the quiet or used to the sounds of a modern city or something like that, that constant chiming might sound almost mournful, a little too much of a good thing. And I want to play that so you can hear. I've got it on my phone here. I found a recording of it, so I'm going to see if you can hear. So I agree. That would get rather depressing if that was going on all day. Now, I don't think it's like constant. I think it's probably every hour, I think is what I read. But it's not like just constant noise, but it's like every so often that goes on. So, yeah, I get what she's saying.
Yeah. It would be nice to hear every once in a while, but all day, every day, that would probably... Yeah.
And I guess if you live there, like it says that when I was reading about it, that's like the heartbeat of the city. So if you live there,
you'll just be used to it.
Yeah, you kind of get used to the noise or whatever. But yeah, so and then also she goes on and says that she wonders whether they still use retriever dogs to pull small carts. So that might sound odd to us today, but in early 20th century Belgium, it was common to see big dogs such as retrievers or mastiffs or shepherds pulling small wagons. They would deliver milk and bread and things like that. And you found a picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll try to put that up and so you can see what we're talking about. It would have been a humble but familiar sight in everyday Belgian life, especially before trucks and bicycles and things like that took over.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lucy also mentioned spending some time in Ostend. And so Bruges and Ostend are like total opposites. And I don't know, did you look at some of the buildings from the 1930s and the casino and all that? That was very interesting. But Ostend is a very different place from Bruges, and Ostend in the 1930s was considered Belgium's seaside playground. So there was wide beaches and promenades and casinos and cafes full of British and continental tourists and travelers and people on holiday and things like that.
I want to go right now.
I know. I do too. Definitely we need to go, especially knowing that her sister, Harriet, would have been there in the 1930s. And it makes me wonder, like, there's always this part of me that wonders if Harriet may have told her because, she's got her Bible, or she had her Bible. Lucy had Harriet's Bible. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder if maybe, I don't know, it seems like there's just more to that story between them.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. It's fun to think about that they were there at the same time, probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think in the same city, but still. So Bruges was romantic and medieval. Ostend was modern and social. And together they offered two sides of Belgian life before the war. One was quiet and timeless, and the other lively and cosmopolitan. And you have found some fun facts about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to tell me the stuff that you have found out and what you loved to learn about it, too.
So Ostend began as a small fishing village in the early Middle Ages. During the war, it became the most bombed city in Belgium. It served as a crucial port and a key part of the German Atlantic wall defenses. Consequently, it suffered devastating air raids. It holds the grim distinction of being the most heavily bombed city in Belgium by the Allies, with over 400 Allied bombs dropped in the city, leading to the destruction of its most beautiful pre-war Belle architecture.
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Did not know that. That is very interesting. Thanks for sharing that with us. So, fast forward what Lucy's talking about for Belgium and Ostend. Fast forward to September of 1944, the time that this letter was written. Belgium had just been liberated from 4 long years of German Nazi occupation. The British, Canadian, and American Allied troops had pushed through in early September, so not long before this letter, and cities like Brussels, Bruges, and Ostend were finally free again. That had to be such a relief. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure the people were celebrating, and the streets would have been filled with cheering crowds and flags and flowers, but there was also exhaustion. The cities were damaged, people were hungry, and an entire country was trying to find its footing after all those years of German control. I really can't imagine that. I mean, I think about what if where we lived was occupied by some kind of foreign force and we were under that rule for such a long period of time. How would you celebrate? How would you, we would be out in the streets celebrating and cheering the people who had helped set us free from that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So I can imagine. I can imagine how they felt, but I can't imagine how that was to live under that. Mm-hmm. Thankfully.
Yes. Thankfully.
So when Lucy says that here, I'm so glad to hear the people are treating you well. I think the Belgians are really sincere and not so mercenary as the French, like focused on money and all that. She's speaking with that slightly old-fashioned British tone, which is a mix of affection but also national stereotypes. But what comes through most clearly here, I think, is her gratitude and maybe a little bit surprised that kindness has survived all the war and the heartache and the struggle. So right here in just a few sentences, this part of the letter captures an incredible contrast, really. Mm-hmm. The Belgium of her memories, peaceful canals, ringing bells, dogs pulling milk carts, and then the Belgium of 1944, which would have been scarred by war, but full of warmth and resilience. So that's a really incredible contrast that she gives us here in just a very small paragraph. And it's amazing what she gives us in these letters. And when we dive in, what we discover about what she's actually talking about here. So in essence, Lucy provides us a beautiful snapshot of Europe before and after everything changed.
She goes on to say, "Well, darling, I am fire watching tonight, and so far we have only had one short alert. I am glad to say the doodlebugs hardly ever disturb us now. Last week we heard one or two mysterious explosions, probably some sort of V2.
Here we go with the V2. So, again, Lucy is providing us with a wealth of information and history right here in this. How many sentences is that? 3 sentences? I mean, just that part right there. We've got so much to dive into. And I'm just grateful. I know you're grateful too to have these and to get into these. But she's given us another snapshot of life back home in wartime Britain. She begins, "Well, darling, I'm fire watching tonight, and so far we've only had one short alert." Now, I know y'all are probably getting tired of us talking about fire watching, but it was such a huge part of her life during this time. It was an every week event that she had to participate in, so it was a huge part of her life. But briefly, just to review, in case maybe this is your first time listening, and I didn't mention that in the beginning. If this is your first time listening, make sure you go back to the episode 1.
Yes,
and start there. There's so much stuff. Briefly, just an overview of the fire watching. This was a civilian duty that became routine during the Blitz, first during the Blitz, and then continued through the later years of the war. Every city, factory, and office had volunteers, and then they were often ordinary men and women like Lucy, who would take turns staying awake through the night on rooftops or in high windows, keeping watch for fires started by enemy bombs. And we learned or discovered last week that she would have probably been at some high point, whether it been on the top floor or on the roof, so that she could see out and not just, they wouldn't have been on the ground level. Their job was to spot these incendiary bombs, and we go in great detail about these. I can't remember which episode, but they're basically small devices that were dropped to purposefully ignite buildings on fire. And so these fire watchers were trained to deal with them before they could spread. Now, fire watchers were not firefighters in the modern sense. They didn't have hoses or engines, but they were the first line of defense. They were armed with the buckets of sand, the stirrup pumps, and a whole lot of courage. And we talk about that in the episode. But by 1944, the heavy bombing raids that had devastated London and other cities in 1940 and 41 in the Blitz were long over, but the fire watching duty remained. The war wasn't finished yet, and the skies still brought danger, just in a new, more terrifying form. And so here we go again about the doodlebugs. Another topic y'all may be tired of hearing about, but it was a huge part of life during this time. And she's going to talk about it because it was a part of her life during this time. So that's where that next line comes in. I'm glad to say the doodlebugs hardly ever disturb us now. So a brief review. The doodlebug was the popular nickname for the V1 flying bomb, a type of early cruise missile launched by Germany beginning just a couple of months before this letter in June of 1944, right after and in response to D-Day. They were small, pilotless aircraft with a buzzing engine that was very distinct, and that's actually where the nickname came from. Londoners said you could hear the doodlebug approaching. Its engine would be rattling like a lawnmower or a motorcycle in the sky. But when that buzzing suddenly stopped, that's when you knew it was about to fall and explode, and it would hit the ground 12 seconds from the time the buzzing stopped. And again, we've talked about that over and over, how terrifying that would be. Tens of thousands of these doodlebugs were fired at southern England that summer alone in 1944, killing thousands of civilians and spreading that constant fear. By late September, the date of this letter, the Allies had overrun many of the launch sites in northern France, which is why she said they hardly ever disturb us now. That makes sense. You know, they're shutting them down. So for the first time in months, people in Britain could sleep a little more easily. I love how she mentions that here because we can get a sense of her mental state and how she is, like, we can hear her almost relief a little bit that they're not bothering us as much anymore, you know, after months and months of being terrorized by them. Can you imagine? Finally, you're not hearing them that much. But then she adds, last week, we heard 1 or 2 mysterious explosions, probably some sort of V2. Now, last week we talked about that the news or the newspapers probably would not have detailed what these were yet. So the public, general public, didn't really know what they were. And so that single line captures this eerie turning point in the war. The V2, which meant Vengeance Weapon 2, was the world's first long-range ballistic missile. So unlike the V1 Doodlebugs, the V2 traveled faster than the speed of sound. There was no warning. There was no buzz, no siren, nothing to warn you. You would just hear that distant boom, and by then it was already too late. And we talked about which would be worse. You know, the hearing the buzzing coming and taking cover, but not really sure where it's going to hit, or it just dropping. I think she may mention it later, if I'm not mistaken. I think she may mention that, how that you just can't hear them. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think she does talk about that. So, but the first V2s hit London September 8th of 1944, literally days before she wrote this letter. So what date is this? The 20th? So what, 2 weeks maybe? Not even that long. Not even 2 weeks, right? Yeah, and so people, as you can kind of get the sense here, people didn't yet fully understand what they were, what these V2 bombs were. They just knew there were sudden explosions and the government was being deliberately vague to prevent panic. Her phrase, some sort of V2, shows how ordinary Britons were just starting to hear the rumors of this terrifying new weapon. So, again, here in just a few casual sentences, we get this vivid glimpse of late war Britain.
So once she has like a sigh of relief from the doodlebugs, now she has to worry about these distant booms or explosions that maybe they really don't know anything about.
Right, and then wondering, you know, maybe they're not going to be distant all the time. Maybe, you know, could hit anywhere. So yeah, just when that's the way life is, isn't it? Just when you think everything's good and calm, something else drops. Yeah. But you get this vivid glimpse of how it would have been during that time, late war Britain. A woman sitting up through the night on fire watch, listening to the air raid sirens, grateful that the doodlebugs, those buzzing engines of terror, had mostly stopped. But now hearing mysterious explosions from a new weapon that no one yet fully understands. So it's a reminder that even in September of 1944, we read the headlines last week, how it would have been feeling kind of positive and upbeat. Even then, when the Allies had liberated Belgium and were pushing toward Germany, for people back home in London, the war still reached right to their rooftops and bedroom windows.
She continues on with, I wonder whether you have seen the enclosed article. I thought it might interest you.
Now, I do not know what article she's referring to. A lot of these letters got separated from the articles. So I don't know which one she's referring to. There are a lot of articles, but I just can't pinpoint which one she may have been talking about.
Well, sweetheart, I'm glad you have heard from your brother.
She also doesn't say which brother, so I would think it's probably Tom, maybe, but I'm not sure. She doesn't name him, and since we don't have his letter from before this, we don't really know who he's talking about. But he told her, so.
She goes on to say, I'm longing for the time when we can be together, and I'm always trying to imagine what South Carolina is like. Anyway, so long as you're with me, nothing else matters.
So by September of 1944, the war had already kept them apart for 4 months. And we said that last time. It probably seemed like an eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we take a step back and we think about today, even if we're apart from one another, we can be all the way on the other side of the world and still have instant communication.
Mm-hmm.
Still instantly talk to someone. But during this time, being away from someone for 4 months and waiting on letters had to seem like 10 years sometimes, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But she was in London and he was on the battlefront in Europe. And in this part of the letter where she writes that she's longing for them to be together, imagining what South Carolina is like, saying, as long as you're with me, nothing else matters, is such a simple line, but it carries the emotional weight of the entire war. So many people were feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
So it just gives us that. Like I said, this letter is so good. It just provides so much insight to what was going on during that time. She's writing from a city that has endured years of air raids and blackouts and rationing, and yet her thoughts are half a world away across the Atlantic in a place she's never been to, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
She has no idea what it's like except for what he has told her through his stories. Maybe I think about Table Rock, he liked to go up there, or Main Street, or, all these things. Maybe the warmth, maybe the humidity, maybe the sunshine, the trees, I don't know. But the sense of open space could be another thing, because London's a big city, and when you're in a big city, you don't have a lot of open space. Maybe those things are the things they talked about that made her fantasize about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But letters like this one were a kind of lifeline for couples separated by the war. The letter traveled to them by slow, censored mail, sometimes taking weeks to arrive to each other. That's another thing. Text messages, even though some people you text and they just don't text back. I'm never not going to say that. I'm never not going to bring that up when we talk about texting. But we live in a world of instant, So I just, can't imagine having to not just wait on a letter. Because now if we wait on mail, it's usually a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
It can even be next day.
Right.
But during this time, they sometimes had to wait weeks because it had to go through the censor. But every letter that they received was a small act of hope. We've talked about that before, how it would just provide such an encouragement to the soldiers especially, but also to the people back home waiting on them.
Mm-hmm.
You're waiting, like she's talked about. She's sitting there wondering if he's okay, wondering, you don't hear from him. You're thinking the worst for a long period of time. It had been, 10 days, she said, that she hadn't heard from him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a different world, totally different than what we experience now. But every letter would have been a small act of hope, proof that you could love and survive the distance between each other, the danger and uncertainty, that your love could survive that and outlast that. So, and then when she writes, so long as you're with me, nothing else matters, she isn't just talking about romance. You think about, she's not just saying, as long as we can cuddle up on the couch, watch a movie together, everything's going to be okay. She's expressing something much deeper here that so many during wartime felt. And she's talked about this some too, that connection that they had when they were together. Mm-hmm. And that sense of belonging to him, belonging to someone, belonging to each other. That was what made the fear and the waiting bearable for her. Because she felt like she belonged to him,
Mm-hmm.
And she said that, you're my darling man, you're my darling boy, and they just talk about belonging to each other.
Yeah.
And nowadays, try to say somebody belongs to somebody, you're like, I don't belong to anybody. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a different attitude about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, you wanted that.
Right.
Like, you wanted someone that you could say, I belong to him.
Right. Something you could just hold on to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In that time
Yeah.
that you were waiting just to hear from him.
Yeah. So, in a city still under threat from doodlebugs and V2 rockets, Lucy is holding on to that vision of peace, of life after the war. And it's anchored not in a place or a plan that they have together, but it's anchored in a person. It's anchored in Jimmie, that hope that she has. So that single line there that she says, so long as you're with me, nothing else matters, captures the quiet resilience of millions of people in that moment, still waiting, still hoping, still believing that somehow their love would outlast the war. That gives me chills.
I know.
That gives me chills because that was how people were. I know that we're not the only people that have love letters between our grandparents, our family members,
Mm-hmm.
our ancestors. And so, I mean, I've seen in researching this, lots of people have these letters, and all of them are similar in their the way they talk to each other, and the longing. The longing is all about that longing for each other, and we're just missing that now. We're missing that.
We really are. Yeah.
We don't want to wait on anything. We don't want to wait on it. We don't want to wait on somebody to text us back. But seriously, in a relationship with somebody, we don't want to wait on anything.
I know.
We don't want to wait on. Oh my goodness, could you imagine now if we were like, I'm going to write you a letter? People would move on so quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they would. Yeah.
Or even if you said, I'll text you next week.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people wouldn't even wait for that.
No, not even the next day they wouldn't.
Mm-mm. No.
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 It's a totally different time, totally different.
It is. And we're missing. I feel like we're missing that. Like, we're missing out on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something we don't have now. And it's just sad to me to think about. When I read these letters, a part of me is sad because we don't experience that now. Everything's so instant. Instant gratification is everything. And
it's almost like you take that for granted.
Right.
Like the instant gratification.
Right.
Because then you get that right then and there, and then you want something else. And then you want something else.
Yeah.
And you need another instant.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like it's taken for granted a lot nowadays.
Yeah, we're missing it. We're missing out on that. That deep, deep connection. That deep connection that forms during times like this.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this is going to be funny, but some of the best meals you can eat are meals that are cooked in a crock pot. You put it in there. You put it in there in the morning and you leave it and it cooks all day and it's so good. Mm-hmm. Your house is going to smell like it and you can't wait all day. You're like, I can't wait for supper because that's going to be so good, but you're waiting.
Yeah.
And it's always better than a microwave meal. Always.
Absolutely, yeah.
Always, 100% of the time. So that's kind of the way I think about this is, this kind of connection, this deep love, I think we're missing out on it. Not saying we can't have deep connections with people now.
Right. It's not impossible.
Right.
It's just different.
It's
completely different.
It is. Very different.
She closes out the letter with, I cannot think of any more to say at the moment, so I will close with all my love to my darling boy. From your Lucy.
So we continue on this journey with Lucy and Jimmie as they detail their life and their love for one another and their longing for one another. And I love this letter. I think it's got so much substance to it and gives us such a beautiful insight to what's going on at this time.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's a beautiful letter.
Yeah.
We just have to dive in and dissect it and do some research. And just,
I know.
Well, just make sure to follow along and subscribe to our channel if you want to keep up with this beautiful journey.
Yes, and we are on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. We don't post a lot there, but we do post our new episodes when they roll out. And occasionally we post a few things, but don't forget, if you subscribe on YouTube, hit that little bell. That'll give you the notifications. And we are on Spotify, but I've got to update that. I've got like 3 episodes on there. So that would be a good place if you're a first-time listener. You can start there. So I guess that's it. This has been a great episode.
It has, yeah. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we hope y'all have enjoyed it too. And as promised, we're going to end with an uninterrupted reading of this letter. So until next time, enjoy. September 20th, 1944. My darling Jimmie, I was so relieved and happy to receive your 2 lovely letters yesterday. I was very interested to hear you were in Belgium. I once spent a holiday in Bruges, a cathedral town, and thought the walks along the canal very pretty, but I found the bells ringing from morn to night rather depressing. I wonder whether they still use retriever dogs to draw small carts. I also spent a little time in Ostend. I'm so glad to hear the people are treating you well. Personally, I'm inclined to think the Belgians are really sincere and not so mercenary as the French. Well, darling, I'm fire watching tonight, and so far, we have only had 1 short alert. I'm glad to say the doodlebugs hardly ever disturb us now. Last week, we heard 1 or 2 mysterious explosions, probably some sort of V2. I wonder whether you have seen the enclosed article. I thought it might interest you. Well, sweetheart, I'm glad you've heard from your brother. I'm longing for the time when we can be together, and I'm always trying to imagine what South Carolina is like. Anyway, so long as you are with me, nothing else matters. I cannot think of any more to say at the moment, so I will close with all my love to my darling boy, from your Lucy. If you're hearing this message, you watched the entire episode, and we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell so you get notifications for new episodes, and we'll see you next time here on the All My Love Lucy podcast.